Hello, folks. Welcome back. The Lord of the Ring. Kind of a different tone this week. I've been excited about this show since I announced it. And then some news hit today that kind of soured it a little bit. Talking, of course, about the loss of one of wrestling's Mount Rushmore characters, and that's Terry Funk. I put Terry Funk over on this show continuously, and it's still not enough. Basically, he's your favorite wrestler's favorite wrestler. You ask your favorite wrestler who they look up to, and they say Terry Funk. Can't be overstated what he did for the business. With me this week, I've got a special guest, my good brother, Mike, and he actually picked this topic, SummerSlam 02. This is his favorite pay-per-view of all time, I believe, and didn't want to bring you in like this, brothers, with a little sad story to begin with, but glad you could join me. How's it going?
Yeah, man, that news came down an hour ago, maybe. You know, we found out about the Funker. Look, man, I agree with you. And again, it's not like I grew up with old WCW or NWA Funk. That's before my time. Now, I've gone back and watched, and I love all the stuff, even the deathmatch stuff, which I'm not a big fan of. Him and Mick Foley kind of made it more legit in my eyes, if that makes sense. But no, man, I mean, even me, Chainsaw Charlie, even though I knew it was Terry Funk, like right. I grew up on that, you know, and that whole feud with the New Age Outlaws with him and Mick. And I even liked the stuff he did later in WCW in 2000 and 2001. Like, there was some good stuff in there I thought that he was a part of. And then you talk about with him and Edge and Mick, ECW One Night Stand 2006. Like, yep. You know, I thought he really added something to that program as well. You know, like you said, he's your favorite wrestler's favorite wrestler. And you go back and listen to any other wrestling show or podcast that you can think of, and Funk is talked about with just the most praise and most respect. And I mean, he kind of transcends eras, if you think about it. I mean, you posted the pictures on the Lord of the Ring Twitter page earlier, but man, like, to even imagine Funk as a young man is really hard because I mean, he's been the old guy for so long. This man was 79 years old, but I mean, he wrestled for 60 years of his life. Been wrestling since he was 19 years old, man. And so to take that into account, that's a long run and a long run at the top. Former NWA champ. What I respect about Terry the most, and I'll shut up, is his ability to want to put people over. You know, and Paul Heyman talks about it in the the Rise and Fall documentary, where he goes, well, Terry looks at him and I can make him too. Let me have him. I'll do something special with him. Like he did that with everybody that he worked with, which is a direct quote from Paul Heyman. And it's true. I mean, the fact that he was even in ECW, by the way, is a testament to Terry Funk. I don't think he needed it. He didn't need the money. He didn't need anything. He just loved the business. And man, R.I.P. to the Funker. That's a tough one to swallow, man. I mean, I remember where I was, where I found out Dusty passed. Remember where I was, found out Macho Man passed, and I'll remember where I was when Terry Funk passed.
Absolutely. And you mentioned what he did with ECW. I mean, back on episode, what was this? Episode 7. I covered ECW Barely Legal 97, their first ever pay-per-view, and the Funker won the ECW title. Let me read this to you. I saw this on Twitter, and this blows my mind.
As the power goes out.
Terry Funk worked ECW pay-per-views, War Games, the Tokyo Dome, WrestleMania, King of the Deathmatch, New Japan Pro Wrestling in the Fukuoka Dome, Smoky Mountain Wrestling, his retirement show, a CWA Austria show, and Kawasaki Stadium, all after turning 50. You talk about longevity, you can't leave out. Everyone thinks, yeah, Ric Flair's still wrestling. He still had his quote-unquote last match last year, but Terry Funk, just, different level.
Absolutely, man.
Anyway, we could turn this whole thing into a tribute show if we wanted to because it's so great. But we're not going to do that. Instead, like I said, we've got a great topic tonight. It's WWE SummerSlam 2002, and I'm going to release this episode on the 21st anniversary. This episode should be coming out on August 25th. So, yeah, SummerSlam 2002. Mike, you love this pay-per-view. You're the one that suggested I do it. Why you like it so much?
Man, this is my favorite wrestling pay-per-view of all time. One, because I don't think there's a bad match on the whole card, which is very difficult to do. And to me, as topsy-turvy as WWE was at the time. You got to remember, end of the Monday Night War, a year before this. We've already had the NWO stuff. Like, a lot of stuff has taken place. The draft, Steve Austin's taken his ball and gone home, in the words of Vince McMahon. So this is like a weird new time and era for the WWE. Rey Mysterio's coming in, and Brock Lesnar's young and up and coming, and just a very entertaining time. And, don't forget, the Showstopper's back in the fold now, something I don't think at that age I'd ever thought I'd see, just because you hear all this really bad stuff about Shawn at the time. So all the planets aligned, in my opinion, for this show. And one thing you can't mistake, and we'll talk about it when we get to the actual show, but the crowd. I can't think of a more engaged crowd that I've ever seen, truly.
Yeah.
That crowd wanted a good wrestling show, and they got it, and they were engaged from the opening fireworks, which I missed, by the way, opening fireworks to the end. Like, just a great show from top to bottom. I love talking about it. It's one of my, people have comfort movies and comfort shows. It's one of my comfort shows. If I really want to just relax, I can put on SummerSlam 02 and just fall right back in to where I was at that time and enjoy myself. So that's the reason why when you had a SummerSlam poll coming up, I was pushing really hard to get on here and talk about it, because it's my favorite show. Now, and I'll, again, be quiet, I like to talk more about bad stuff. So the fact that I really wanted to talk about my favorite pay-per-view of all time is a testament to the show, because normally I'd like to talk about a really bad show that we both hate. I think that'd be funnier, but I'm glad that you let me on to do this as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, I didn't even put a poll up, matter of fact. I just picked 2 SummerSlams. I was like, well, what 2 SummerSlams should I cover? Because I got 2 episodes in a month. How about Austin breaking his neck? And then arguably the best SummerSlam, one of the best pay-per-views ever. And it gave me a chance to have you on. Now, for those of you listening that may not be familiar, Mike and I are no strangers to podcasting together.
That's right.
He's on the horror movie podcast with me. Don't go out there. We review horror movies and interview legends of the business. We've also had a college football podcast and had, another general sports podcast, another wrestling podcast back in the day.
That's true.
It's always good to have you on and chat.
I forget about the gauntlet, man. It's been a while. I'm glad.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that earlier today, buddy. It's just, we haven't talked wrestling in a long time, that wasn't over text. So very excited, especially going back and digging into the old stuff. That's what I like to do. I mean, I know that we can agree that Cody Rhodes is the GOAT currently, so we don't really have to discuss that, but
okay.
Oh, sorry. My bad, bro.
Yeah. And that's all for this week. And I'll be back by myself next.
Hey, buddy, before we get started, I haven't done this in months.
Go for it.
I'm going to have libations live on the air. Here we go. Oh, yeah.
What?
For the working man. What?
All right. So while you're popping the top, I'm going to kind of set the scene for where we're at in 2002, kind of a state of the business. So in May of 2002, the World Wrestling Federation rebranded to World Wrestling Entertainment. This was after a lawsuit from the World Wildlife Foundation. So the WWF is now the WWE, and SummerSlam 02 would be the first SummerSlam under the WWE name. In August of 2002, revenue was down from about 7% from the previous year, but the real decline in the business started in May of 2002. But that loss, of course, wouldn't be shown right here because it's reflected on the next quarter's financials. So to me, we're just a year and some change removed from Vince buying out the competition. So it seems less than ideal to put your competitors out of business and then see a decline in the bottom line. Like that had to be alarming on the inside. But to me, I love this era. It was awesome to me to see guys from WCW, ECW, and WWF on the same roster. I think we got some cool matchups that I wanted to see in the 90s. And the storylines were entertaining. Now, I was also a freshman in high school, so that's probably why I enjoyed the storylines and the provocative nature, why it appealed to me so much. But, yeah, I loved it. Earlier in the year, you mentioned this, WWE held the first draft lottery. This was in March, and this was for Raw and SmackDown to have exclusive rosters. At the time, the WWE Undisputed Champion appeared on both brands, so when The Rock won the Undisputed title at Vengeance in July, for example, you'd see him on Raw and SmackDown. Now, also at that Vengeance pay-per-view, it's important to point out that Triple H decided to sign with Raw instead of SmackDown. He was a free agent. And then the last couple things I'll mention, and I'll throw to you for any thoughts on all that stuff, is during this time, you mentioned the NWO. They debuted in the WWF in 2002 in February, but they disbanded in July after Kevin Nash tore his quad on Raw. So that was really short-lived. Thank God. It was entertaining, but in hindsight, it was just so unnecessary. And then also Hulk Hogan and Edge defeated Chuck and Billy in July on SmackDown, but would lose the titles to Lance Storm and Christian at Vengeance a few weeks later. And that would be Hulk Hogan's last belt in the WWE. Got any thoughts about that recap?
Yeah, what a weird time, man. You're right. I mean, just the influx of ECW and WCW guys, if you look back, I mean, and it's funny because I think about 2002, but you really can't get to the state of the business there without 01. If you go back, and I think Meltzer and Keller and those guys have all kind of reported almost to the note, like the decimal. You can see the business start to turn the day after WrestleMania 17. Like it's almost, you can mark it to that night when after Austin turned heel, which nobody wanted then and nobody wants now. Nobody wants to boo Stone Cold Steve Austin. So again, but you talked about the business being down. It starts there. And then you talk about kind of killing your competition. I do think there is something to that. You know, I've heard a lot of reasons over the years why the business has taken a little bit of a nosedive in popularity. One, options. And as much as nobody wants to believe this, regionality matters the same way it does in the sport that we love in college football, where you had WCW guys. Those guys weren't tuning into Monday Night Raw. So you lose that audience right there, what's called the lapsed fan. So that happens. And then you get to 2002, which, by the way, I also love the era. Look how stacked this roster is, man.
Oh, yeah.
This is an incredible collection of talent. I don't think it's been better before it. I don't think it's been anywhere near it since. Like, this is the best collection of talent right here that you will find under one umbrella. And so, again, really cool matches, really cool stuff. But think about 02. One, they're Vince Russoing the Undisputed Championship. I love the Undisputed Championship. I love the look of it. I've talked about this many times. I love that belt. It's my favorite belt they've ever had, in my opinion. I like Big Eagle, but this one kind of takes the cake. I love the idea of it. And then Triple H wins it at WrestleMania, loses it to Hulk Hogan, of all people, the next month. The month after that, The Undertaker beats Hulk Hogan for it. Okay. Then it gets put on The Rock. And then on this show, it changes hands again a month later. So we're playing hot potato with the belt. So the creative is okay around this time. But what I think you have, and you mentioned it before we got on the show, buddy, is everybody's storylines kind of are interwoven here because of the split rosters, in my opinion. You've got people going back and forth. I really liked this time for that. Like, I liked, current day, there's no rules. It's the Wild Wild West out here. Everybody's on every show. Okay.
Yeah.
But at this time period, they did a really good job early on of keeping these rosters separate and making them feel very, very different. SmackDown was, to me, my favorite show at this time. You had the SmackDown 6, which everybody kind of talks about. Yep. And I love the creative. I love Paul Heyman and Bruce Pritchard kind of working together on that show at that time. And Raw was more of a, I don't know how to explain it, but it wasn't doing enough for me at that time. But, last thing, I do have a comment on the NW. Man, those who do not learn from history, the famous quote, it's lost to me now, but, you're doomed to repeat it. Well, the NWO comes in and it's their original 3. To me, hindsight, we may not have needed it, but at least it made sense. Yeah. Like, here are the 3. These guys left WWE, at the time, 5 years ago. Now they're back as the NWO. Like, okay, this makes sense to me. But then we had X-Pac. And then we had Big Show. And then we had Booker T. Kind of. And then he's out. And then we have Shawn Michaels for 2 weeks. Like,
he's the one that kicked Booker out.
Here's the thing. By the way, hilarious segment, which is Dustin, that's another thing. Nobody wanted to boo Shawn Michaels here either. Yeah. Not a good creative choice. Like, sorry, but it's kind of like Edge now. Like a couple months ago or a year ago when they tried to turn Edge heel, nobody wants to boo Edge. Nobody.
Yeah, that's why they quickly realized, let's get Edge out of the Judgment Day and put Finn Balor
in there. Yeah, I mean, come on. Yeah.
But The NWO, I agree. When they brought the original 3 in, that made a lot of sense. Even putting X-Pac with them makes sense because, Six-Pac was the fourth man. But
X-Pac heat, brother.
yeah, when you start adding, Booker T, which I get Shawn Michaels, you're basically just saying, okay, we'll just put the click together on TV.
On TV, sure.
But it didn't work. And then it did give us one of the funniest things ever, though. Book. Yeah, I'm just a Booker T. Booker T. Dude, that's one of the funniest things ever.
Incredible. Funny. Hey, I do have a question for you, and then you can get back to your notes here. Would you have been? Do you think okay, let's remove Kevin Nash tearing his quad. Unfortunately, and we all love Big Kev, but that seems to happen to Kevin Nash quite a bit. If that doesn't happen, and you just keep the click together on TV as the click, does that work?
I'm all for that.
Yeah,
I'm all for that.
And that includes, heel Shawn with Triple H, so we don't get this match yet so fast. Maybe we build to it over time, maybe WrestleMania 19, something like that. Again, hindsight's 2020. The match that involves Shawn Michaels and Triple H on the show is one of my favorite matches of all time. I'll get to that when we cover it. But so I'm glad we have it. But at the same time, I think the click for the first time ever, and you can't predict Scott Hall's erratic behavior. So, he can either be in or out there because you still have X-Pac, you still have Shawn. I think it will work.
You also got to, you can't predict Scott Hall's behavior. I mean, the plane ride from hell took place during this period, and Scott Hall's out of there. So,
dude, 2002 was a ride. What in the world is happening?
I wasn't going to bring up the plane ride from hell, but I'm not going to speak much on it. Go watch the Dark Side of the Ring episode on it. Mm-hmm. I actually watched it yesterday, and for every time I see it, it's like, oh man, it'll make you look at some of your favorites in a different light. But
don't forget that one of the GOATs, Double J, was running a startup company around this time too. Don't you forget it, pal.
That is true. NWA's Total Nonstop Action had launched during this time with their weekly pay-per-view model, which was so innovative. I actually loved it.
I did too. It's a swerve, bro.
Nah, Vince Russo. I'm going to have a whole episode dedicated to Vince Russo one day, and I'm going to try my best to get Jim Cornette on.
I'd like for you to bring me back on for that.
Absolutely.
I'd like to be a part of that. I have some thoughts. All right, anyway, go ahead, buddy.
So you mentioned how, what I talked about before we started recording, how all the storylines and feuds are kind of interwoven during this time. So that's where we're going next. I've been lately trying to break down the feuds and the storylines going into each match before we start the pay-per-view breakdown so that we you caught up to speed, you know what's going on, but it was hard. I couldn't just go match by match in this one. So what I did was I picked the last week of July, and I just went through all the Raws and SmackDowns and kind of gave a brief 2 to 3 sentence recap of each show. So what we'll do is I'm going to run through this, and then, Mike, if you've got any thoughts on that particular show's highlights that I mentioned, just give me a signal, a thumbs up or something, and I'll stop and let you talk. Otherwise, I'm going to power through. So we're going to start with the July 22nd Monday Night Raw. This was Eric Bischoff's first Raw as general manager. This show opened with him and Triple H in the ring, and Triple H introducing his best friend, Shawn Michaels, who had been away from the company for 18 months after back surgery. Bischoff says that HBK is going to be the game's manager. The two are happy and having a good time, and everything seemed like old times. And even later in the show, Triple H handed Shawn a bag and told him to put it on, and they both shared a smile. So they come out later in the show to the DX music, wearing DX shirts, doing all the DX things in the ring. But that nostalgia was short-lived as Triple H turned on HBK and pedigreed him in the ring. Also on that show, you had Intercontinental Champion Rob Van Dam. He defeated Jeff Hardy to unify the Intercontinental and European titles. So we're cutting down on our mid-card belts here, which I think is a good thing. And the show closed with new SmackDown General Manager Stephanie McMahon. She showed up. Bischoff tells her to leave. So she says, okay, and took Raw's Brock Lesnar with her. Brock had won the King of the Ring in June, making him the number one contender for the undisputed title at SummerSlam, and now he's headed to the blue brand. We'll go to Go ahead.
Yeah, so really quick, the fact that Eric's first show and the DXTs are on the same episode doesn't seem like that in my mind. Trust me, I remember those moments.
Yep.
But the fact that they were the same show, that's wild to me. Also, I know it was very predictable, but I love that segment with Shawn and Hunter. That is good stuff.
Yep. I remember watching that episode. I rewatched it the other day to do some research, and I was like, holy crap, I remember where I was watching this episode. That's wild. So we'll go to the end of the week now, and we've got the July 25th SmackDown. This is Steph's first episode of SmackDown as general manager. This episode opens with a very weird video package of her making announcements for the show. Had some very weird editing with camera cuts. Just strange, but something different, so I guess they're trying something different here. But the main highlight of that show is that on that episode, Rey Mysterio debuted and defeated Chavo Guerrero, and then later in the show, he came to Edge's defense in a cage match, so he was put in a good spot for his debut, made him look strong. On to the July 29th Raw. Shawn Michaels goes on a mission to find Triple H and get his revenge. Triple H says he did it because Shawn couldn't accept being his manager and always had to be in the spotlight. He says Shawn's career is over and that he can't hang with Triple H. While he's in the ring cutting a promo, he gets word from a crew member at ringside and runs to the parking lot to find Shawn bloodied and laid out. Now, also, you had Eric Bischoff. He revealed his newest acquisitions for Raw, Christian, Lance Storm, and Test the Un-Americans. They attacked The Undertaker after his match with Chris Nowinski and hit him with 2 concertos. The worst concertos I've ever seen, by the way.
Yeah, so 2 things. One, again, more great storytelling to me with Shawn and Hunter. Because even though you knew in the back of your mind, of course, this was Triple H, but they did a pretty good job of making me second guess myself as a 10-year-old, by the way.
Yeah.
Of making me like, oh, wait, he was out in the ring. How the hell did that happen? Okay. Second thing, if you watch the Paul Heyman documentary on Peacock, or I had it on DVD at one point before that became a thing, if you go back and watch that, where he talks about sending the Un-Americans over to Raw as being like, oh, man, you're really twisting my arm here. I guess I'll take Benoit and Guerrero and those guys from you, and you can have the Un-Americans. I mean, I really don't want to lose these guys, but it's a tough pill to swallow, but I'll try to help Raw out a little bit. Knowing damn well he was – I mean, I love Christian. You know he's my GOAT. But knowing damn well what he was getting in return on the other end, man, what a fleece.
Yeah, I was going to say Dixie Carter must have been making the roster moves for Raw. Sorry.
You son of a gun. You son of a gun. Hey. I will fully admit transparently, this is my least favorite Christian era. His hair was starting to go. Stringy, long hair. He was wearing the mesh t-shirt. No, not my favorite Christian era for sure.
Yeah, I don't like this Christian era, but I did love the Un-Americans gimmick because it really piggybacked off the Hart Foundation in '97, which I talked about in the last episode. One of the greatest factions, their greatest run. I think that's my favorite Bret Hart run. But
sure thing.
Anyway, on that 7/29 Raw, you also saw Chris Benoit defeat RVD for the Intercontinental title. And then the main event saw The Rock defeat Ric Flair in the main event. I believe that was the only time they ever worked singles match against each other. And after the match, Flair got a microphone and says he had an announcement to make. But then Chris Jericho's music hits. Commentary is confused because he's a SmackDown superstar. He attacks Flair with a chair shot and says the only announcement that matters is that Raw is Jericho, so he's now defected to Raw. Fast forward to the August 1st SmackDown, and you've got Kurt Angle and Hulk Hogan. They had a match one-on-one to determine who would take on Brock Lesnar on the August 8th SmackDown. They both wanted a piece of him. Hogan would win the match when Lesnar attacked him, causing a DQ. Also, Chris Benoit and Eddie Guerrero had defected from Raw to SmackDown, and Benoit just took the Intercontinental title with him, so the belt's on SmackDown now, I guess. That's going to be short-lived. We'll talk about that. Keep it pushing. We'll go to the August 5th Monday Night Raw. The show opens with Jericho. He calls out Flair. He calls him a has-been. During his promo, Triple H comes out to a big pop like the fans forgot what they saw Triple H do to Shawn Michaels the last 2 weeks. Triple H accuses Jericho of attacking Shawn, and Jericho denies it. He says he believes Jericho that he didn't do it, but vows to find who did. As Jericho's trying to finish his rant after Triple H goes to the back, RVD comes out and challenges him to a match. Flair nails Jericho with a chair in the match while the ref is down, allowing RVD to hit the 5-star frog splash and get the win. This episode really was all about Triple H being on a mission. He's trying to find who attacked Shawn. He questioned everyone that may have some motive. He questions Booker T because Shawn kicked him out of NWO. He questioned Big Show because
book.
He questioned the Big Show because Shawn told Big Show he didn't have time for him right then. He questioned the Un-Americans because they said they had unfinished business. So near the end of the show, he chats with Shawn via satellite and apologizes. And Shawn says they're good. Triple H says he swears he'll find out who did it. Shawn says he has security cam footage that shows who did it. After enhancing the image, it was Triple H. Triple H said he did it to prove how vulnerable Shawn was. Shawn says he'll be 100% by SummerSlam and lays the challenge. Triple H says Shawn can't wrestle anymore, but Shawn says he knows he can't wrestle, but he can still fight.
One of my favorite segments of all time. I remember exactly where I was when I watched it. I remember watching it like it was yesterday. I remember the Triple H smirk. You're damn right it was me, Shawn. and the big pop when Shawn goes, by SummerSlam, and the whole crowd goes, crazy stuff. Great. And again, they're not telling a complicated story here. What's easier than former best friends fighting over jealousy? There's nothing easier than that. But they're really doing a good job, even though it's predictable in hindsight. But they're really still, it's believable. I believe it. And they're telling a good story leading up to this SummerSlam event for sure. And by the way, the best Flair Jericho stuff is in the next episode, I think. Yeah. If it's what I'm thinking of, that is some good stuff, pal.
Yeah. So also in this episode, though, this show happened in Baltimore. So Lance Storm cut a promo, and he says they're close to the nation's capital, and the president couldn't even defend his own country. And the president's from the same hometown as The Undertaker, who couldn't defend himself last week. So there's pretty harsh words there from Lance Storm. And later, the Un-Americans had a tag title defense, and afterwards, The Undertaker hit the ring with a chain and chased him out of the arena. Now, the funniest part of this whole era to me is Howard Finkel. The Fink asked Bischoff on this episode if he can challenge Lillian Garcia for the main announcing job on Raw.
Why the long face, Lillian? Oh, sorry.
Bischoff says he doesn't care. Just alternate. Let the fans decide. He doesn't care. Later in the show, the Fink and Lillian Garcia are in the ring, and Bischoff comes out and says they've gone a little too long. In fact, about 3 minutes too long. So the 3-minute warning is in the ring. That's Rosie and Jamal. And the Fink gets out of dodge, and he lets Lillian get attacked. And she got stretchered out. The Fink's character and promos during this stretch were just phenomenal. Hilarious stuff.
Fantastic. He'll Fink is the best, man.
The best. So good. So later that week on SmackDown, August 8th, Kurt Angle was facing a rookie John Cena, but Chris Benoit attacked Cena during the match. So Ray came in to make the save. Eddie Guerrero and Edge joined the brawl, and then after the match, Angle confronted Benoit and Guerrero, and Eddie says he's tired of hearing how Cena, Mysterio, and Edge are the future. He says they are, and he proposes a 6-man tag match. Later we see Edge and Cena talking about the other team, while Mysterio does chin-ups in the background, and then Mysterio says, don't worry about Angle, he's got Angle. Funny thing about that segment is if you've seen the bloopers, that shelf actually breaks and Ray falls on the floor, and it's hilarious. So the 6-man tag match, it would end with a fun sequence. Angle hit the Angle Slam on Cena, who then rolled out of the ring. Kurt was on his knees in the ropes talking trash to Cena on the outside when Ray hit the 619, and then the West Coast Pop got the win. After the match, Kurt is backstage looking dumbfounded and says he just got pinned by a 12-year-old. He says Ray wasn't the legal man, and if he had integrity, he'd forfeit the match and vows to break Ray's ankle. And then later on in this show, you had Brock Lesnar versus Hulk Hogan. And Lesnar would put Hogan in a bear hug, refuse to break it after the ref called for the bell, and then attack Hogan with the chair afterwards. So this would be the end of Hulk Hogan's run until early 2003. He's done with the company during this time. August 12th, Monday Night Raw. Jericho and Flair were in opposite sides in a tag match. Flair pants Jericho, pulled his pants down, showed his butt to the world, embarrassed him. So Jericho challenged Flair to a match at SummerSlam, and it was set. Later, Flair interrupted Jericho, his promo, put a trash can over his head, and rolled him down the ramp, embarrassing him again. Jericho got revenge a little later, attacking Flair during a backstage interview. And then, to close the show, Jericho was performing with his band Fozzy, and Flair interrupted it, ran Jericho off, and then destroyed Fozzie's sound equipment, pushed over the speakers. It was hilarious. Broke a guitar. It was awesome. Loved it.
It's incredible. I watched it again this morning because I needed a refresher. It's so good, man. Flair in this era, I wanted to talk about it on the top, and I just kind of forgot. Flair in this era is very interesting, especially when you know the story behind him not having much confidence. You think about him at the end of his WCW run where he would only wrestle with a shirt on. Yep. Just a totally different vibe, but he's so good here. And he seems old here, but he's not. He's not that old. Just seems old. At the time, he's still doing great stuff. And I love this Flair. I like this era of Flair more than probably most do. Because he was having matches with guys he hasn't had matches with yet. Feuds with guys like, 2 months prior to this, he's feuding with Austin as a heel. Now, with Big Show as his lackey. Now he's a babyface with Jericho. I mean, just a lot of fun stuff in here, man. Something funny to think about is that Flair was 52 during this run. That's only 6 years older than AJ Styles is right now. We don't think of AJ Styles as being old. Shout out to Conrad Thompson, who always does to AJ Styles. But he's right for that, though. Yeah. It's incredible. AJ Styles is older than you think. AJ, maybe, yeah. AJ, during this time, was in that startup company, Total Nonstop Action. So, but, people forget he was, 20 at the end of WCW when he's in there with the cruiserweights doing the 6-man tags and stuff like that with Prince Iakea. Anyway, sorry, go ahead. Prince Iakea, there's a name. This is not a 2001 WCW show. Although I would love to just do I want to do a whole podcast series breaking down WCW 2000 to 2001 at the end. That's what I want to do. Sin, greed. I want to do it all. God, why you want to put Sid Vicious through that? Hey, those last two. That's terrible. It ain't softball season though, so we're good. No, hey pal. The last two pay-per-views to WCW were not bad. I know, not bad. And if you go back and watch them, they were pretty good shows. Anyway, go ahead. So, also after on the same show that Jericho and Flair were going back and forth there, Lance Storm had a match against Booker T, and then Test attacked Booker after the match, so the Undertaker comes to the rescue. Test then says backstage that Bischoff has granted him a one-on-one match with Taker at SummerSlam, so there's that match set. Later in the show, Taker teamed with Goldust and The Rock to face Test, Christian, and Triple H. I bet Stephanie McMahon was conflicted during that one because she's got Triple H and Test on the same team, but there's that. What are you talking? We're just going to ignore the GOAT? Well, I don't think she and Christian had any kind of romantic relations. I could be wrong. I know Macho Man Randy Savage. Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah. We won't go there. Also on that show, The Fink cut another promo running down Lillian Garcia, who's at home recovering. And it was great. Why the long face? Later that week, August 15th, WWE SmackDown, sorry. Kurt says Ray hit him with a cheap shot and got lucky. When Ray approached him and challenged him to a match at SummerSlam, it was set. Eddie's going to continue his portion of this feud by targeting Edge and pointing out how Edge has never speared him, despite Edge did in fact spear him off the apron in the 6-man tag match the week prior. Ray and Edge are going to team up against Los Guerreros in this episode. During the match, Kurt Angle interfered and attacked Ray, giving Ray and Edge the DQ win, and Edge speared Eddie outside the ring into the barricade. Also, on this episode, when Benoit left Raw with the IC title, Raw GM Eric Bischoff wasn't happy, and he snuck it by Stephanie's staff that Benoit's going to have to defend that title against the Raw superstar at SummerSlam, and it's going to be a rematch with RVD. But to make it up to Chris Benoit, Stephanie's going to give him a match with The Rock on the August 15th SmackDown, in which Brock Lesnar is going to attack The Rock at the end. So there's that. So that's what I'm saying. Every storyline is just kind of interwoven here. Hey, question for you, and I was going to do it when we got to the match, but I think this is probably a better placement. How do you feel about Edge during this time period? Because as big of a fan, as big of a fan as I am of Edge, and especially in ring, I mean, work pretty impeccable in my opinion. Yeah, but character. And I like that. Look, I will never complain about an Edge and Eddie Guerrero match ever. No. Ever. Love those two. But while Eddie's got this character, and I think he's trying to make kind of pull something out of Edge as a character. What is Edge at 2002? Like, what's the character? What am I investing in? And I will say, going back and watching it is funny because we know the kind of character work that Edge can give.
Yeah.
But he wasn't showing it quite yet in 2002. I found that pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I would say this is definitely my least favorite era of Edge. I mean, the Brood Edge is my favorite just because the Brood's entrance was so awesome, and I love the whole weird vampire thing. It appealed to me. I'm a big fan of his return since 2020. Yep. Him and Christian were phenomenal together, and so really, and then of course the Rated R Superstar.
Oh, sorry.
So yeah. So, what's that leave? It leaves this, and it seems like it's a very vanilla run. They didn't really have much for him, so it's just like, go out there and be a babyface. That's it. That's your character.
Yep.
So, the following Monday on Raw, only one thing of note, the Un-Americans were attacking Taker when Goldust and Booker made the save, setting up a 6-man tag match for later in the show. And this allowed for a natural matchup between Goldust and Booker T to face the Un-Americans for the Tag Team Championship at SummerSlam. And then the go-home SmackDown, August 22nd, The Rock and Brock Lesnar would come face-to-face once again with promos from Brock and Paul, and then The Rock responding. But Benoit and Eddie would attack The Rock as he was on his way to Brock in the ring. Kurt Angle also had a match on this one with Billy Kidman, and Angle told Ray that he better not show his face during this match or else he's going to break his ankle at SummerSlam. During the match, the ref took a bump, so while he's down, Ray did a run-in, did a seated senton on Kurt and ran off. Kurt chased him off, resulting in Kidman getting the win by countout. So that's our build-up for SummerSlam. So now here we are. It's August 25th, 2002. The show opens with a cool, brief video package before heading into the arena. There's a lot of pyro and a very hot crowd. We're in the Nassau Arena. Michael Cole says the event sold out in 90 minutes. We've got 14,797 on hand. We waste no time before hearing Kurt Angle's music hit, and he's out for our first match. We see Cole and Taz, who will be calling the SmackDown matches, and then Rey Mysterio's music hits. But Rey's not coming down the aisle. Instead, he starts the match on the ring apron behind Kurt Angle, and he hits a springboard head scissors to start us. Rey's on fire to start. Kurt gets the upper hand and does a nice little roll through to an ankle lock, but Rey's in the ropes. Right after that, Rey goes for a 619, but Angle moves out of harm's way. We got a frantic pace to start. The crowd is all over Kurt Angle. I mean, it's just awesome. A hot crowd makes all the difference in the world for a wrestling show. You can't understate that. Rey was flying all over the place and bumping like crazy for Angle, which also helps make a guy look like $1 million. This match was just flat out awesome. Angle goes for the Angle Slam, but Rey reverses it into an arm drag. That was a great spot. Looked really cool. And then when Kurt's on the floor, referee Jimmy Corderas stops Rey from attacking him. And while Corderas has been over through the middle ropes checking on Kurt, Rey does a running plancha over top of him, over the top rope, on the Angle on the floor, and then follows it with a springboard leg drop on Kurt back in the ring. So WWE, to me, is getting a great taste of what WCW fans saw for years in Rey Mysterio. This is a great way to debut him for the pay-per-view audience. Kurt's able to lock in the ankle lock, but not long after, and Rey escapes with a mule kick that sends Kurt into the ropes in perfect position for the 619. Rey hits it and the West Coast pop, but Kurt kicks out, something that we don't see people do. He kicked out at 2. We get a little bit of a botch on the finish, but not bad. They recovered nicely. It's hardly noticeable. Rey went for a Hurricane Rana off the top rope, and Angle was supposed to catch his leg on the way down, catch him by the ankle, but he kind of slipped. He barely missed it, but he immediately slid down, applied it anyway. Got Mysterio to tap out in the middle of the ring. The match goes 9 minutes, 20 seconds, and Dave Meltzer would give it 3 3/4 stars in the Wrestling Observer. What'd you think?
Well, first of all, FTM, 3 3/4 stars, my butt. Anyway, look, man, right off the top, I love this open. Again, it hits me all in the warm, fuzzy, nostalgic feels. This crowd is incredible. All the pyro. And again, a bygone era that I do miss. I know people always kind of pipe, what about the Attitude Era? Blah, blah, blah. But no, there is something to the crowd with all these signs. Like, I think it's a really cool aesthetic. The black ropes, the black mats, the black aprons, just like a really cool look and feel to the product, in my opinion. And you get that with this open. And then, you like you mentioned, we're right into Angle's music. This crowd is so into the "You Suck" chants. I mean, later on, and even a little bit before this, you got to remember the "You Suck" chant started 3 months ago at this time, so they're still pretty fresh. As time goes, you get a little bit of crowd participation, buddy. 14,000 plus were chanting "You Suck" to this man's music, and it's awesome. It's great. This is probably the start of my favorite version of Kurt Angle as far as his WWE run, where we're toning down the comedy just a little bit and cranking up the wrestling machine part. And he's so good. And, I sent you a note. I said, hey, you'll have to forgive me for the comment I got to make. But, Kurt Angle is bricked up here, pal. He is on some kind of juice. I don't know what kind of juice, but he's on the roids, pal. But he looks like $1 million.
Oh, yeah.
Perfect. And again, I love the idea of having Rey Mysterio come in from behind off the top rope. Because, again, this is what you want from Rey Mysterio. In 2002, what else are you signing Rey for? You want to sell a ton of masks, and you want him to do what Rey Mysterio does. Yeah. What a better introduction than off the top rope. Big pay-per-view, big match. Angle's one of their guys. This is a WCW guy coming over. It's really weird almost to even remember Rey in WCW because he's been with WWE for so long, and he was at the first All In, which is another thing that just blows my mind. Wrestling in time are such a funny thing. But anyway, well, and the two are telling a great story back and forth, man. They're almost telling, at first they're telling the story that Rey's too small. He's small. Now he's doing a decent job of getting away from Angle, using his speed. I love the story. They're both telling the story of they each have these strengths and whose strengths are going to kind of outmatch the other. Again, the spot where he jumps over Jimmy Corderas is super fun. Like you said, this is what WCW fans get to know or already know about Rey, and now the WWE audience kind of gets to see. And I love the 619 during this time period because it was fresh. It was new. Now I don't really like seeing it. I'm going to be honest with you. It doesn't do anything for me, but at the time, the combo of the 619 and the West Coast Pop, big fan because it was very unique and very different. And honestly, I almost thought Angle landed on his head, which would explain a few things with his neck. It didn't look like a very fun landing for Kurt. But again, Angle selling, you talked about Rey selling. Angle selling for Rey, phenomenal. Just made Rey a big deal right off the bat. And by the end, by the way, the crowd's kind of low-key pulling for Kurt. Like, if you really go back and watch, the crowd's popping for Angle's stuff almost more than they are Rey's. Great match. I thought the decision was right to put Angle over. And look, I've heard this argued a million different ways. I understand. Look, losing Triple H, not a good decision. A million years had passed by. Triple H has won 10,000 world titles, Royal Rumbles, WrestleMania, whatever. Yeah. Why not let Sting have the moment? He's a legend of the business. Like, that makes no sense, right? Right. In this context, Rey's new. He's a little small, okay, just in the grand scheme of things. He's coming from WCW. Why give him the win with that rub when he comes off looking strong, Angle stays strong, and Angle's kind of one of your guys? You don't quite know what you have in Rey yet, by the way. First big-time match, pulls it off well. I think Angle going over was the right call. Plus, you can't let WCW have the upper hand, pal.
I agree, though. It was the right call. Let me rephrase that. I don't have a problem with Kurt winning. I wouldn't have had a problem with Rey winning either, but
right, sure.
Rey debuted so strongly on SmackDown in the month leading up to this, and then he looked strong in this match. So no problem with it. I agree with what you said. 3 3/4 stars, maybe a touch low. This is a solid 4-star match or better, Absolutely. 4 1/4. But yeah. Now, after the match, we see Stephanie McMahon. She's walking backstage. She says SmackDown is a superior show. She tells a crew member to go tell Eric Bischoff to top that match. Now, when she walks into her office, though, Bischoff is already there. He's waiting for her. He says they should share the office. She says she wants to see the look on his face when SmackDown reigns supreme. She says to take out a pen and paper and take notes, or he tells her that, rather. And these two were in a heated rivalry on Raw and SmackDown during the time, stealing talent from each other and determined to outdo each other, but their acting sucked on this show. They couldn't read these promos at all. They had no chemistry. Terrible.
They have zero chemistry. It was awkward. There's like a weird sexual tension, even like very strange stuff here, pal. And again, I like Stephanie promo outside of this. Like, I think Stephanie's a great on-screen character. I think Eric's a great on-screen character. But for whatever reason, this is oil with water, man. They did not mix.
Yeah.
These are the only negatives I have about this whole show. And they have 3 of these things. And I think it does drag the show down just a smidge, especially the more I watch them. They're just cringe, man. And, you go back and you read and listen to the things that Bruce Pritchard said, who produced the segments. They did them live. It wasn't overly scripted. This is one of those things I probably would have done scripted because
what's
I think
weird
it would have helped it a little bit.
What's weird is it made, he can say it's unscripted all they want, but it sounded like they were reading lines. It didn't sound like they were having a conversation. Nothing out of their mouth sounded genuine.
Nobody talks like that.
Yeah. But anyway, after that's over, we see good old JR, Jim Ross, and Jerry the King Lawler. They're going to be calling the Raw matches tonight. Then we get Chris Jericho's music hits, and he's out for our next match. We see a clip from last Monday's Raw when the Nature Boys tearing up Fozzie's stuff, and then Nature Boys out to a good pop. JR mentions that he's a 52-year-old legend making his SummerSlam debut, which I thought was interesting. This match is special to the WCW fan in me. I mean, these are 2 of my favorites of all time, favorites from WCW in my childhood. I wanted that Monday Night Jericho shirt so badly as a kid. And,
you can get it.
Huh?
On Pro Wrestling Tees. I'm pretty sure you can buy it if you want.
Right. Yeah, I might do that now, but I'm saying at the time though, I wanted that shirt as a kid, but when you have to choose, do I want the Sting shirt or the Jericho? I went Sting every time. Anyway, it's funny to hear Jim Ross criticize Fozzy on commentary during this match because he and Jericho work together now in AEW, of course, and Jericho uses Judas as his theme, and it's one of the most over entrance themes ever. Like, that was hilarious to me in retrospect. This match has all the patented Ric Flair spots and the Chris Jericho patented spots with his arrogance and his trash talk. In a bit of role reversal, Jericho goes to the top rope, but takes too long, and Flair power slams him off the top. That's usually Flair taking that bump. So that was funny to see, or fun to see. There's more of that later when Flair goes for the walls of Jericho on Jericho, but Y2J reverses it and locks in the figure 4 on Flair. It's broken up when Flair grabs the rope and taps out at the same time. Jericho argues that he won, but referee Charles Robinson says no. I mean, of course Lil Nate is going to side with the Nature Boy. Come on, what are we doing here? Jericho hits Charles Robinson inadvertently after a Flair chop. So while he's not looking, Flair hits a low blow and then slaps on the figure 4, causing Jericho to tap out. 10.5 minutes, 2 3/4 stars from Meltzer. Worth noting on that finish that it was originally booked for Jericho to lose with an inside cradle. Flair beat him with that. Jericho petitioned, no, I want to lose to the figure 4. You mentioned Ric Flair's confidence at the time, and yeah, Flair didn't think he was worthy of beating him with the figure 4, but Jericho talked him into it and said, you're Ric effing Flair, and basically said, no, you're going to make me tap out. So that's special. That's selfless. That's
Absolutely.
Respect from Chris Jericho. Love everything about that.
Well, and again, it doesn't hurt Chris Jericho to lose to Ric Flair via figure 4 like that.
Right.
Yeah, man. I mean, come on. Especially after the ref shenanigans with Charles Robinson. So look, man, what did Meltzer rate this? 2 3/4? Is that what you said?
2 3/4. Yep.
So, yeah, maybe, but also for the time given, 10 minutes? Perfect. Literally perfect. Like, this is all this match needed to be. It was one fun spot after the other. You mentioned the reversal spot where Jericho coming off the top and Flair power slams him. Again, I love that. I thought it was really creative and fun. It is really weird to see this time period of Chris Jericho because he's still wrestling. Like, this is somebody that's still going, and I'm pretty sure – I don't know how old Flair is here off the top of my head. What, 54, 55?
52.
50. How old is Chris Jericho now?
Yeah, that's true. I think Jericho is like 52 now.
That is insane to think about in hindsight. Because that means, Jericho's in his late 20s here.
He's 52 right now.
Look at
He'll
that.
He'll be 53 in November.
The same age that Ric Flair was during this match. Incredible. Really fun. Again, time's a funny thing. As much as I love Judas, I got a little fun smile out of hearing the old
Break the
old
walls
Y2J.
down. Yeah.
Because the words are terrible. And I can find it on YouTube, I think, but there's a segment on his podcast where Jericho reads the lyrics dry and we'll have like no music in the back. And it's so stupid. It makes no sense. And again, it was fun to hear it, though. It was fun. To me, that's a Jericho's worst look, though. I'm going to be honest. The whole like big, long beard and he hadn't quite ponytailed it yet, but it was coming. I wasn't a fan of that look for Chris Jericho. I thought it looked so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous.
It's actually my second favorite Jericho look. My favorite is the mid-90s WCW with the pom-pom on top of his head.
I'm a fan of that.
Top. Yeah.
I'm a fan of that look. Are you trying to say that you don't like the I need to speak to your manager look that's going on right now?
Yeah, that's not my favorite. I also wasn't a favorite of his List of Jericho look with the weird short hair with the frou-frou front hair. Not my favorite.
The No Country for Old Men Jericho is my favorite, though. Real good stuff. Short hair, yeah, but real cerebral. Anyway, look, just take a second to think about what this match is. Chris Jericho versus Ric Flair. We talked about it at the top of the show. What a roster, man. Love the back and forth here. I think the ref spot with Lil Nate is fun. And you mentioned Flair winning with the figure four. How many times has Ric Flair won with the figure four? Since I've been alive and watching Ric Flair, not very often. So it was really fun to see him do that. And again, fun match. Wasn't more than it needed to be. I thought made Flair look like $1 million, like he could still go. And I feel like Jericho still comes out looking really strong. So again, I know it's at 2 3/4 stars. Man, I don't know. I mean, if you really want to judge the technicality part of the match, sure, it wasn't Omega Okada or anything, but it was dang entertaining, man. I loved it.
Honestly, I think that this match is part of what got us Evolution. Because if Flair goes out here and he can't perform and it doesn't restore his confidence, because I think this match did, then we might not get that incarnation of Ric Flair, and Evolution was incredible. Now, I will say, you could tell that I think you grew up in a WWF household and I was a WCW household, because when you said how many times you've seen Ric Flair make someone tap his figure four, pal, I was a WCW kid, so a lot.
Well, true. You're also a little older than me. So when I was watching WCW, it was late 97, early 98. Flair wasn't winning at all then, pal. Not with Eric. With Eric Bischoff as the booker, he wasn't winning very often at all. So
yeah, we also had the worst horseman of all time. That's not true. That's
Mongo McMichael.
Mongo is who I was going to say.
Hey, don't speak ill of Mongo. Come on.
He's the worst wrestler of all time. That has nothing to do with him as a person or what he's going through in real life. Thoughts and prayers to him. Man couldn't wrestle his way out of a wet paper bag.
I was going to say, technically,
and he was an even worse promo or color commentary.
I mean, if we're just going real life, the worst horseman is Chris Benoit. Okay.
Well, okay. I was going to say Paul Roma, but geez, you took it literally. Okay.
I was going to say Paul Roma's definitely the worst on-screen horseman. That's for sure.
All right, let's keep it pushing. Next, we see Brock Lesnar. He's warming up in his locker room, and Paul Heyman says Hulk Hogan's career is dead thanks to Lesnar. And tonight, it's the same thing with The Rock's title reign. Heyman is hyping up Lesnar and says he's the next big thing. That was, of course, his nickname at the time. Love that. Also, I mentioned it later in here, but I'm just going to say it now. I miss Ponytail Paul. Ponytail Paul was the man.
I have that written down. I said, this hair is way better. And by the way, I don't think his hair looks good. It's just I love the character. It's really good.
It just helped his character so much. So, especially because he wore the ball cap, and if he paired it with the long leather trench coat, then it's game over. That's the favorite Paul Heyman for me.
I agree.
So we get a quick look outside the arena before we hear Latino Heat play. Eddie Guerrero's making his way to the ring next, and we see a great fan sign that says the dirtiest mullet in the game. That popped me. I laughed. Edge is out next to the best entrance theme of his career. It's Rob Zombie's Never Gonna Stop. Love that.
All right, pal. Metalingus is anyway.
Yeah, I know. You're right. Okay, second best. Commentary puts over the jealousy angle these two have been involved in, and Cole calls Edge a sex symbol. That's something that was kind of weird. That's his character. You asked what Edge's character is? I guess it's just being a good-looking guy that's a babyface.
Him and Booker T had a match at WrestleMania over a shampoo commercial, so.
Yeah, okay. They also put over how Edge has never speared Eddie. Edge ties Eddie up in the ropes and hits a version of the spear on him, and he goes for it again. But Guerrero is able to move, and Edge goes through the ropes onto the floor. This sets up Edge selling a shoulder injury for the rest of the match, and Eddie's targeting it with some nice offense. Later in the match, Edge goes for a spear, but Eddie Guerrero drop kicks him in the shoulder. And then Eddie goes for the frog splash, but Edge gets his knees up. Then Edge is on his hands and knees in the ring, and Eddie does a frog splash on the shoulder/elbow. That was awesome. Like a targeted frog splash. Love that. That's great psychology there. Edge does hit the spear finally and gets the win. Match goes almost 12 minutes. Gets 3.25 stars from Meltzer. That's probably fair. I might go a little higher. These are two of the all-time greats, but fun match.
So here's what I'll say about this match: is as good as it is, and it is, 3.5, 3.75, I think is pretty fair. This isn't their best match, and you can tell they like this match, but you can tell while the match is going on that something hadn't quite clicked with them yet. I'm pretty sure, and I could be wrong if someone wants to go back and really do some research. This is their first singles match with each other. So as far, especially on a stage like this, there's definitely a little bit of like getting used to, but I love this match. Like, that is not to take away anything. Go ahead.
Well, speaking on that, and then I'll let you finish. I did read that Edge was apparently apprehensive about working with Eddie during this time, because Eddie was dealing with some pretty heavy demons.
Sure.
He even had to be sent home from a SmackDown show because he was under the influence of something, allegedly. And so Edge was concerned. He didn't know about. He was vocal about it backstage. He did not really want to work with Eddie Guerrero, but this match is what helped him gain that trust going forward. So I think you're absolutely right. Go ahead.
Sure. And again, Edge around this time is coming off the Angle feud where we shave Angle's head. Like, he's a hot we talked about him kind of being vanilla. He's still a pretty hot character as far as he's coming off of a really big run with Angle, who's again a very featured guy, former world champion, like good stuff. He's tagging with Hogan, like they're pushing him to the moon, trying to make him look like $1 million. And I think the match is good. I know 2 months later on SmackDown they have a match, ladder match, that is incredible. Yeah. So this can be topped, and I think in my head I'm comparing the two matches, but that's not to take away. I think it's a good match. And there's just a few spots where, you mentioned Edge not wanting to work with Eddie. There's a few spots where you can tell that Eddie's the one calling this match. And I love the psychology of old school. I don't care if it's, Lou Thez and those guys old school, picking a body part and working it, buddy. And they do that with Edge's shoulder. You mentioned the frog splash. That's incredibly smart, man. Like, who else is thinking that except for Eddie and Edge? I love it. In my notes here, I just have, God dang, I miss Eddie. How valuable would he be behind the scenes as a producer or even with AEW? Like, just how he would be so valuable to any locker room right now, man, if he were still around. And honestly, Eddie could probably still go. I mean, all things considered, he could probably get a match or two out of himself right now if he were still around. So I miss it every time I see it, man. I love this character. I love Eddie a ton, man. Cool finish, right finish. Like I said, they have a better match in a few months, but not to take away anything. I thought the match was really, really good. And the match had heat. I know every match did, but like the crowd cared. Like they had somebody they wanted to win. And you can't say that about every match on every show.
No, for sure. After this match, we get a very weird video package. It's talking about how the WWE has no offseason and there's no contract disputes. When two sides have an issue, they settle it in the ring. Very weird to me. I mean, I know Major League Baseball was on the verge of a strike at this time, but it's kind of a weird thing to jab. Like, the WWE or Major League Baseball is not your rival. What are we doing?
I hated it. I thought it was a waste of time. Stupid. We know you don't have an offseason. Actually, a few of us kind of wish that you did, myself included, just because I feel like it makes things fresh, gives me something to look forward to. We love college football, but, buddy, I don't want college football 365. No. The offseason, that cooldown period is what gets me so excited for the season.
That's what made Lucha Underground so great. They had seasons.
Dude, I agree. I agree 100%. Even Wrestling Society X had seasons, pal. Yeah. I mean, so no, I thought it was very odd place. Now that's something that's Vince McMahon all day.
Yeah,
that is
for
Vince.
sure.
Like, we don't take breaks, pal. I get up at 3:30 and have chicken and rice and hit the gym. I don't sleep.
Yeah, it was something. But after that, we get the coach. He's backstage, Jonathan Coachman. He's interviewing the Un-Americans, Christian, Lance Storm, and Test. They get some cheap heat by crapping on the fans in attendance and then Americans in general. Like I said, I love this stable, this angle. It reminded me so much of the Hart Foundation's run in 97, which I covered on the last episode. Just fun stuff. Now, it was risky, though, because this is, August of 2002. When September 2001, we know what happened, but I think they handled it nicely. Something else I loved during this era was Goldust and Booker T as a tag team. So much fun, such great chemistry. They're out next. They're set to face the tag team champions, Lance Storm and Christian. They come out to the ring with an upside-down American flag to get even more cheap heat. Goldust takes a crazy bump in this one early on. Lance Storm tosses him over the ring post in the corner to the floor. Don't think I've ever seen that before, honestly. Later in the match, referee Nick Patrick is preoccupied trying to keep Booker T out of the ring, and Storm and Christian go for a concerto on Goldust, but he ducks and the Un-Americans clang chairs together. Look, it was loud, but no shot it hurt enough to take them both out. Like, they both dropped like they'd been shot with a shotgun. That was great. They just hit chairs together. That can't be any worse than taking a fastball off the inside part of a bat when you're batting, and that doesn't drop you to your knees. Come on. After Booker gets the hot tag, he whoops on Christian a little until Lance Storm takes out Patrick by accident. He came flying in with a heel kick. Booker moved, and down goes the ref. Right after that, Booker hits a double scissor kick, taking out both of the heels, and then he hits a spin-a-rooney to a huge pop from the crowd. The ref's still down, so he can't count for Booker, and after Booker and Goldust take out Storm, Test does a run-in. He hits Booker with a big boot and then hightails it out of there. Christian pins Booker T for the 1-2-3. They're going to retain the titles. Now, something I hated, though, when Test got out of the ring, Nick Patrick was looking right at him. He was sitting up, like starting to recover, and Test went right. He crossed paths right in front of Nick Patrick's line of sight and got out of the ring. Lawler even says afterward that it looked like the ref saw him. Womp, womp. But other than that, the match was fine.
Nick Patrick's a heel ref. Come on, pal.
That is true. Can't forget those NWO days. The match went just over 9.5 minutes. Uncle Dave will give it 3 stars in the Observer.
What a fun match. This is a good old school tag match, man.
Yeah.
This is so entertaining. What you have here is a crowd. Again, we're in New York, less than a year after the 9/11 attacks.
Yeah.
And you got the Un-Americans, as a gimmick. A lot of the heels get cheered in this show. This was not going to be one of those matches, man.
No.
And you talk about the pairing of Booker T and Goldust. One, odd couples work on wrestling. It just does most of the time. Like right now, we're seeing it with Adam Cole and MJF. Like those two should not mesh. It's been great. So the same thing that you have here with Booker T and Goldust. Booker's this young, cool, jacked guy, tough. And then there's Goldust, who's wacky and zany and androgynous, pal. Androgynous, pal. But, I love the pairing on screen. I thought their stuff was hilarious. I know that Brian Geewarts did a lot of the writing for them. Really good stuff, man. Here's another thing I wanted to make sure I said it. Booker T in this time, red hot, dude. Yeah. Red hot. The crowd would have popped for anything Booker did, man. Yep. And I love the old school psychology of working this match to the hot tag to Booker. Place went nuts when he's in there kicking butt, taking names, taking out both guys with it. Half the time I forget just how big Booker T is. Like he's a big
massive
dude.
Man.
And that's why WrestleMania 19's booking will always perplex me, because you really could have strapped the rocket to Booker T and had something special, but that's just me. But listen, the crowd legitimately mad and disappointed when the Un-Americans get the win. Like that is what you want. You want that investment. You have something here. And I've heard a lot of people, including Jim Ross and Bruce Pritchard, kind of crap on Lance Storm and Christian and Test for not fully buying into this Un-Americans gimmick. But I love that Lance Storm's kind of gone back on that narrative. And it's like, well, you know, you guys weren't the one having to take the heat from town to town in a post 9/11 America. We were.
When they lived in America. So it's not just like they could go home after it and be fine. They lived here.
Now, look, if they did that gimmick now, whatever. Like, who cares?
Yeah.
But time and place matters, man. And look, I love the Un-Americans. I actually thought they all did a great job. I really wish they had gotten William Regal more involved early.
Same.
I think that would have helped kind of skyrocket that thing as the mouthpiece. But, man, I love this match. I love the story going into the match. And, I thought, man, 3 stars, yeah, maybe. But I think it's great, man. Like, I would go just for my pure – it's not the best technical masterpiece, even though Lance Storm and Christian had their working boots on, and Booker T's a great worker. And last thing I have here, Goldust doesn't work this match like Goldust. He works it like Dustin Rhodes. If you go back and watch, he's not working the same style that Goldust from 96 to 98 was working. He halfway through the match, he starts kind of working like Dustin does now. And I found that to be very interesting. Just love their dynamic on screen. I thought it was a lot of fun, man. I would go 4 stars, 8 stars in the Tokyo Dome. Let's get it.
And you mentioned Lance Storm, so I'm going to use this opportunity once again to put him over. One of the top 5 technicians of all time. I love Lance Storm. I might be a homer because he's an ECW guy and I'm an ECW guy, but I'm going to give him a
Smoky Mountain guy too, pal.
Smoky Mountain guy, him and Jericho.
That's
Got
right.
to see them as a kid. Got to see him live.
That stupid ponytail hawk he had, that was terrible. Anyway.
Love it. I might bring that back. Next up is the unquestionable wildest segment of the show. We go to WWE The World in Times Square. Jamie Noble is with his girlfriend Nydia, where a winner of a contest got to make out with Nydia. There's 2 guys up there. She picks from 2 guys, and then when she picks the winner, she jumps on him, tackling him onto a couch, and they start sloppily making out. All the while, Jamie Noble is cheering them on. All right, man, I got nothing.
Baby, you get down. Yeah, baby, you get down in there, give them that tongue. You get down in there, man. Yeah.
Now, I will say that Jamie Noble and Nydia had some entertaining segments leading up to this pay-per-view.
The Playboy Mansion is great, man.
I completely forgot about this version of Jamie Noble until I rewatched this show and then watched the Raws or the SmackDowns leading up to it, Raws and SmackDowns leading up to it. To seeing Nydia jump on Michael Cole and make out with him at the desk while Jamie Noble's cheering him on. Like, shout out to Jamie Noble, man. That was some entertaining stuff.
Absolutely.
He's great, as trash TV as it was so fun.
I'm gonna give some kudos to Nydia too during this time period. A tough enough winner, not a whole lot of experience in the biz, and just really plays that character well. Her and Noble were a great pairing, man. I love this pairing. And while this was, look, every show needs a little gaga, as Pat Patterson would put it, and this show was this segment what I thought was the perfect amount of like just fun. Like, okay, we just had a match that had a little bit of a disappointing finish. Here's a little bit of a letdown spot. Let's cool it down a little bit, man. I thought it was fun. Yeah, baby, get down in there. Give him that tongue.
Baby, get in there.
Come on, girl.
Give him that tongue.
Come on, baby, get in there.
Yeah, so fun. Back in the Nassau Coliseum afterwards, and Eric Bischoff tells Stephanie McMahon that Nydia would make a fine addition to Raw because she really knows her place in the business. Yikes. That's a crazy thing to say. Steph says that women in the business's place is like her, on top. They also talk about RVD in the Intercontinental title match, which is next.
What's the deal with the innuendos here?
It's just, yeah.
I don't understand. You know Vince McMahon wrote that.
Well, he also booked him to kiss later on, so yeah. We see that also. Not on this show.
Then Eric had to kiss his wife, and Vince is over there laughing.
Yeah.
He's got a weird sense of humor. I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah.
No, this segment stunk on ice, pal. This was not good. Not
terrible. Good. So back in the arena, representing SmackDown, the Intercontinental Champion Chris Benoit is out, and he's followed by the challenger Rob Van Dam from Raw. My inner ECW fan was stoked for this match. Now, on paper, this is 2 styles that I'm not sure could get any more opposite. Benoit's the master technician who had an unmatched aggression. Rob Van Dam, well, to play off one of his nicknames, he's one of a kind. Not sure how else to explain his offensive style. It's a mixture of martial arts and high flying, and he's so laid back and chill. Everything Benoit wasn't is what Rob Van Dam was, but it worked. They had great chemistry. These two together were a nice contrast, and honestly, I mean, they could both probably sleepwalk into a 5-star match, in my opinion. Benoit goes for the diving headbutt, but RVD is able to move out of the way. He immediately attempts a 5-star frog splash, but Benoit moves. After that, Benoit locks Van Dam in the crippler crossface, but RVD is able to get his foot on the rope. We get a peek backstage at Bischoff and Steph. They're watching the match together, cheering on their guys. And since I haven't said it enough yet, they could not act. This was so bad. Every time they spoke, it sounded like they were reading. It was just terrible. The only detractor from this show. Benoit drops an elbow on RVD that lands on his throat. And I don't think it was intentional, but he kind of paused for a minute as if to give Van Dam a chance to catch his breath after he did it. I'm curious if he either gave Benoit a receipt for that or, what happened with that. Van Dam goes for the cartwheel moonsault variation of the Rolling Thunder, but Benoit moves out of the way and slaps on the crossface again. Van Dam's able to roll through and attempt a pin, but Benoit ends up carrying the momentum through for a pin of his own and almost gets the win. Benoit starts focusing on the left arm of RVD, and as he locks him behind his body and hits a Northern Light suplex, he rolls through, maintaining the lock on his arm, and delivers another one, and then another one. It's not as fluid as when Matt Jackson of the Young Bucks does it now, but that's the first time I can remember seeing a rolling Northern Light suplex executed, so that was innovative. Loved it. Benoit applies the crossface again afterwards, but Van Dam starts crawling towards the ropes, so Benoit breaks it and applies the Dragon Sleeper. RVD escapes, locks Benoit in a crossface of his own, but he doesn't have it on tightly because of his arm hurting. Benoit is able to slip out. RVD reverses a belly to back off the top rope into a crossbody, and he goes up and hits a beautiful 5-star frog splash, rotating in midair. He gets the victory, secures the Intercontinental title for Raw, much to Eric Bischoff's delight. Fantastic match. It went 16 and a half minutes. Meltzer gave it only 3.5 stars. That is low, I'll say that. This was fun.
Buddy, this is a strong style match, man. They beat the crap out of each other,
Yeah.
man. They're not, dude, talk about working stiff. This is stiff right here.
Well, this is two of the most notoriously snug workers in the business. So
there's a spot in here where Benoit doesn't get his hands up, and Van Dam comes around with one of those kicks and nails Benoit in the side of the temple. Not so fun in hindsight, just throwing that out there.
Yeah.
But again, just they are laying their stuff in. Look, I'm a little bit in with both of you. You mentioned the rating. I think that's a little low. I feel like the match was maybe a few minutes too long, and I don't mean that in a bad. Like, look, love this match.
Fair.
I love how hard hitting it is. They beat the crap out of each other. How realistic it felt. This is a clash of styles in a good way. Sometimes styles make fights, and I felt like this was like a spread tempo offense against, one of those great Georgia defenses. Like, I wanted to see what these two look like in the ring together. I thought it was really, really good, man. Two of my favorite in-ring performers of all time.
Same.
One of the only times I can remember Rob Van Dam's ponytail falling all the way out. So they were working their tail off.
Yeah.
Because Rob Van Dam, that thing is tight.
That's a good point.
In there. It never fall. Buddy, long hair, Rob Van Dam. That's the only time I can even remember that. So they're out there really giving it their all. Again, there's a time where Benoit runs his forearm across Rob Van Dam's nose, and I thought it was going to break. I mean, they're really getting their stuff in here. I love it. And again, the last 7-8 minutes, though, masterclass.
Yeah.
Masterclass. The back and forth. Once they start to kind of build, they kind of feeling each other out a little bit. It takes a few minutes. When they start to build to that crescendo, I thought it was great. Love the finish of Van Dam rotating through midair. And I'll just say this, and I know, hey, I'm not saying this for cool points or anything. Feels weird still to me to watch a Benoit match, man, and enjoy it. I'm not even going to get into separating art and all that stuff. Just still feels a little inky sometimes, man, especially when you kind of forget about it when you're locked into this show, taking notes, having a good time. Benoit was so good. Like, What do you say? I mean, he was one of my favorites of all time. incredible. Looked smooth. And by the way, I think it was the right call to put the belt back on RVD because obviously we know soon we're getting a U.S. championship. So, yeah.
Yeah, they would introduce that in, I think, mid-2003. So,
yeah.
Each show had their mid-card title. After that, we go back to Bischoff and Stephanie again. And Eric is gloating in Steph's face. And she just does this like really awkward, loud laugh and walks off with no explanation.
This one's a wet fart noise.
Yeah.
It's bad.
Yeah.
This is the worst of the three. I just wish, why was this in here? I don't understand.
It only lasted like 45 seconds, and it was so pointless.
Right. God. I'm glad they're over.
Yes. Next, JR is talking about Undertaker's match with Test. We get a video package showing the Un-Americans faction and how they came to be. Then Test music plays, and he's on his way to the ring carrying the upside-down flag just like Lance Storm did earlier. And who better to stand up for America than the American badass, The Undertaker? He rides his motorcycle to the ring, and man, I got to say it, I always hated this gimmick. Not the gimmick itself, but for The Undertaker. I just wanted him to be the dead man. I wanted him to do that gimmick his whole career. I know a lot of people love this version, like this is what they grew up on, but I didn't grow up on it, and I never loved it, not even at the time.
Sure.
Taker goes for old school rope walking early on, but Test throws referee Jack Doan into the ropes, causing Taker to lose his balance and fall. Funny thing I noticed in this match was in the second row on the hard camera side in the crowd, a fan had a sign that said "Funaki is God," to which I know he would say, "Indeed." Shout out to Bruce Pritchard. After his patented running DDT, Taker is able to hit his old school move and follows it with snake eyes. Test goes for the pump handle slam and then follows it with a choke slam, but Test is able to kick out. Oh, Taker reverses it and follows it with a choke slam. Test is able to kick out. As Taker is setting up for the last ride, Storm and Christian do a run in. The ref lets it go. They both get in the ring and start to attack him, but I guess they never hit him, so the ref lets it go. Taker is able to choke slam them both. Great looking choke slams. Test hits a big boot after that, but Taker's able to kick out. Test grabs a chair, and as Jack Doan is trying to get it from him, Test knocks him to the mat. Taker gives a big boot into the chair, into Test's face. He follows that up with a tombstone, gets the pin. Now, Test's feet may have been underneath the ropes, but the cameraman did a good job at not letting us get a clear angle of it. I don't know, but kind of looked like as tall as he is, his foot may have been under the rope. Should have been a rope break, but that was supposed to be the finish, so we're not going to acknowledge it. I get it. After the match, Taker goes and grabs an American flag from someone in the crowd, and he holds it up for a good pop and then drapes it over his shoulders on the turnbuckle. It's a pretty cool and pretty iconic photo opportunity there before riding his bike back up the ramp. To me, this was a pretty standard Undertaker match. I mean, he got all of his spots in. He looked, strong. It wasn't my favorite. Honestly, if we're talking just matches, it's probably my least favorite on the card. It went 8 minutes, 18 seconds, got 2.25 stars in the Observer.
Yeah, so to me, this is the worst match on the show, which is saying something because it's not a bad match.
It's not.
It's just not. Again, of course, there's better matches on the show, but this didn't go longer than it needed to. It was exactly what it needed to be. You have a heel Test character who's red hot because he's in this Un-American gimmick, and you got who better, like you said, than the American Badass? Like just perfect mesh. A little bit of a Styles makes fights here again because they're both very similar workers a little bit. Now, Taker during this time was working more like a wrestler than he was during his dead man gimmick. So there's a little bit of mix and match here. You got to remember, Taker's coming fresh off a heel run before this. I mean, he was a heel for a while there and working that style. So he's kind of switching back now to work with the Un-Americans. And I will say, I think Test fits his role well here. I kind of wish they had just big booted each other for 6 minutes and got out of the ring. Because Test has an underrated big boot. If you go back and look, man, he lays it in. He's got long legs. I like the way he delivered the big boot. I thought it was very believable. They don't overstay their welcome. Crowd gets the finish they want, which they went nuts for, when Taker gets the win. Because, again, they all hate Test, Un-American, New York, all that stuff. Solid match. Right winner. Again, worst match on the show, which I still think is a compliment because there's buddy, there's shows that we've done where this would be the best match.
Yeah, for sure. After the match, JR and Lawler pitched the next match, and it's Triple H versus Shawn Michaels in an unsanctioned street fight. We get a video package showing their friendship and how they became enemies. Honestly, that video package is hilarious to me because of the music they played during the beginning of it. Like, I laughed. It's this friendly, like, nursery rhyme type song, and it was funny. But it was a very solid video package. Shawn Michaels is out first, and he's got a ton of pyro, the most I can ever remember him having. He's dressed in jeans and a white tank top to show that he's here for a fight and not a match. He's still got his shiny metallic chaps on, though, which is funny, hilarious to me. The game's out next, and he does have his wrestling gear on. JR puts over Shawn's back injury, so we can expect that to be a part of the psychology in this one. The match goes on to the outside early on, and it's funny to see referee Earl Hebner, try to get them back in the ring. There's no rules in this one. Earl, what are you doing? Shawn goes for the sweet chin music, but the game ducks and delivers a backbreaker, and then another. So definitely targeting the back. The game gets a chair and nails HBK over the back with it. This match gets violent. Triple H DDTs Shawn Michaels on the chair and busts him wide open, and then whips Shawn with his own belt. Something that stood out to me was that JR is so good during this era. This is like peak Jim Ross to me. He really sells Shawn as an underdog and draws so much sympathy for him. Later, Earl Hebner breaks up an abdominal stretch because Triple H is using the ropes for more leverage in an unsanctioned match with no rules. Okay, Earl, get out of the way here. But it does lead to one of my favorite Hebner spots. Triple H shoves him, and he gets all feisty and shoves him back. They did that spot a lot, and I loved it every time they did it. They did it a lot at house shows, and you can see videos of it on YouTube. So that was always fun. Triple H dominates early on thanks to multiple uses of chairs, but he sets up for a pedigree on a chair, but Shawn drops down and delivers a low blow to get a breather, and then start that momentum swing. He hits the sweet chin music into the chair, busting the game open, so both men are now bleeding. Shawn catches his second win, and it's his turn to dominate the match for a while. As the crowd chants, "We want tables," they start fighting around the announce tables. And a funny spot, Shawn takes off Spanish announcer Hugo Savinovich's shoe and nails Triple H in the head with it. That was hilarious. So we've got chairs, ring steps, a ladder, a trash can, a fire extinguisher, a sledgehammer, a shoe, a belt. This match had weapons galore, everything but the kitchen sink. And, of course, we got tables. Shawn hit a big splash from the turnbuckle on Triple H through a table at ringside, and then hits an elbow drop off a ladder in the ring. The finish is kind of disappointing to me, though. After the elbow drop, Shawn sets up in the corner, ready to deliver sweet chin music, but Triple H catches his foot and attempts a pedigree. But Shawn grabs his feet and does a jackknife pin for the 3 count. So just winning by a jackknife pin is kind of disappointing to me, but it is what it is. After the match, Triple H attacks Shawn with a sledgehammer and lays him out so he got his heat back. JR sells it like crazy on commentary, and Shawn does a stretcher job. Match went over 27 minutes of pure violence. It was Meltzer's favorite match on the card. He gave it 4 3/4 stars. Pretty remarkable stuff considering this was Shawn's first quote-unquote match with the company since WrestleMania 14 in 1998. I loved it.
Buddy, this is one of my favorite matches of all time. I think it holds up even now. I don't know where I'd place it, but if someone asked me to name 3 of my favorite matches of all time, this would be on that list. My favorite match of the show, obviously. I love it. And even the lead-in. The video package is my second favorite video package of all time. Right behind Undertaker and Kane going into WrestleMania 14. It doesn't get a whole lot better than that. But this is right up there to me.
Rock and Austin My Way, but
hey, that's number 3. So
okay.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. No doubt. Again, any mix of those 3 I would gladly take.
Sure.
Incredible stuff, incredible lead-in. The crowd, when Shawn Michaels' music hits, is insane. The pop. And I know he's Shawn Michaels and he's uber confident and he's been on TV and all this stuff, but we had to think in the back of his mind, what kind of reaction am I going to get, man? Am I a big deal?
Yeah.
Buddy? This crowd was hot for this match. They wanted to see it. What'd
you think about Shawn coming out to the ring dressed for a fight, wearing jeans and cowboy boots and a tank top, but he still had his sparkly chaps on, but then Triple H comes out in ring gear. I thought that was interesting.
Okay.
I think they should have coordinated that.
I was to say two things. One, I don't think Triple H was ever going to wrestle another match not in his wrestling gear.
Yeah.
He's actually did an interview on Talk is Jericho about that, which I don't remember exactly the reasoning why, but there's a reason there. But anyway, I love the look that Shawn has here. I just don't know why he needed the sparkly stuff on top of the Street Fight clothes. I guess just giving them that Shawn Michaels presentation probably meant something to him, so maybe that was what it was. But yeah, I actually like the jeans and boots here because, one, we don't even know if Shawn had tights at the time. Now we find out he wears the doo-doo brown tights in a couple months.
Doo-doo browns with the Dutch schoolgirl haircut.
Oh, it's terrible. Oh, it's so bad. And then they put that in the video game. Here Comes the Pain as an alternate option. Terrible. Anyway, no, man, love the start of this match. I texted you earlier today, buddy, Triple H has working boots on. And you got some matches where you watch Triple H, you're like, I don't know if you're invested here. Buddy, he's all in. He's got his working boots on. They have a great match. The chemistry's off the charts. My favorite story behind the scenes of this is Shawn wanting a street fight because he thought he'd be limited. He wanted to know if he had, buddy, he's doing dives and moonsaults and, man, shut up, Shawn. You knew what you were setting the bar low so you could blow it away. Don't deny it. It's okay, man. And by the way, he's probably thinking maybe, well, this is a one-off. I'm going to go all out. You mentioned all the weapons. All the weapons are there to me because like they're playing with house money at this point. The crowd cares. The match is hot. They've already worked themselves into blood. They got color. What do we have to lose here? We'll do whatever we got to do. And I feel like that's where the match really starts to take off while still telling a story. Because two things. One, Triple H still kind of comes off as dominant through the match, even though Shawn has his spots. Two, you mentioned Jim Ross. Masterful call in this match. Like, this is the kind of Jim Ross that I know it's far gone. I'm not asking for it again. Jim Ross has done his time in this business. So I'm not critical of Jim. But this is peak Jim Ross at his best. Big match feel. People kind of complained when Hunter and Undertaker would ask for Jim Ross for their big matches sometimes. But this is a reason why. He has that big match ability to call and tell that story, and he does a great job here. I feel like getting color was a good call, by the way. I thought it enhanced it. Love that. I love that they both get it as well. Shawn winning was a little bit of a shock to me. But, again, I've heard Bruce Pritchard explain, hey, we got him this one time. Why not send the crowd home happy? And then Hunter gets his heat back very, very quickly. So I'm okay with the booking. And speaking of the booking, man, the attack that he put on Shawn was, dang, man. Yeah. Even in hindsight, that's a toughie. He hits him in the back with a sledgehammer. He beats the mess out of him. And, JR's call there makes it even worse. And I love the smirk that Triple H has. It's almost like, all right, you got me, but I won the war. Like, all right, man, yeah, you got a little sneaky thing there, but I just left you in the puddle of your own blood. Now you're going out on a stretcher. So, no, man, one of my favorite matches of all time. I love the build-up. I love everything after the match. I just think it has so much of what I like about pro wrestling all in one little pool there. So, yeah, man, one of my favorite matches for sure.
Well, and Triple H even showed up the next night on Raw with a big bandage on his forehead with that same smirk. And that's what he said, you got me, but I won the war. After the match, Howard Finkel, the Fink grabs a microphone and cuts a promo. What a crazy segment. He says that even though the MLB may be going on strike, they'll always count
the Fink.
Trish Stratus comes out now, and the Fink cuts her down and insults the Long Island skanks in attendance. Trish says he's got a sexy voice, and Fink tells her that it's a dog-eat-dog world, and she's got the puppies.
Can I do this?
Go for it.
Gotta do it. I got Trish, you have the puppies, but I've got the wiener.
Yeah, he said that. She hugs him, says it's quite a surprise. He says it's quite a surprise, but Trish says the real surprise is Lillian Garcia. She's behind him. Lillian slaps the piss out of Fink and then kicks him in the boys. What a segment. I mean,
This was great.
Between this and the Jamie Noble segment, if you can't laugh, then you don't have a pulse. Like, this is just top-notch comedy.
And great placement.
Yeah.
Right in between your two semi-main events. Look, there's only one main event, but I do believe in the phrasing of semi-main. Like, all right, the match, before the match, it's fine. Okay. This is perfect placement, though. You just went through 27 minutes of a war. You need a little bit of a let-up. Like, we got to forget there's a wrestling show happening. Send out heel Fink, which, by the way, the crowd was all for it. Listen to the reactions. Go back and watch the segment. One, just given our current landscape, when Trish and Becky are on screen now, the reactions they're not getting. Listen to Trish's pop when she walks out in front of this crowd. Massive reaction.
Absolutely.
Just a massive reaction. And Fink has great heat, and it's a dog-eat-dog world, Trish. You may have the puppies, but I have the wiener.
What a line.
Why the long? I won't do it again.
So after that, how are we supposed to come back from that? Well, we get a video package showing us the path that Brock Lesnar and The Rock took to get to SummerSlam. And as always, it's an awesome video package. I mean,
loved it.
The WWE video packages are so next level, just incredible.
Untouchable.
Then, my GOAT, the next big thing, Brock Lesnar is out first for our main event. I'm going to walk that back. I know I say he's my GOAT, but in the grand scheme of things, Terry Funk is the GOAT. So, my second GOAT, second on the GOAT tier is Brock Lesnar. He's out for our main event.
I mean Christian, Terry Funk.
Okay, he's got Paul Heyman with him, and he's set to face The Rock for the Undisputed title. The Rock is out second. He gets a nice pop from the crowd. He sprints to the ring, and we start out in a hurry. Brock dominates early, and when Brock knocks The Rock to the outside, even Heyman gets a kick in. Heyman actually is very involved in this one. I miss Ponytail Paul. Like I said, he was a menace. But like Heyman's ponytail, that pop The Rock got earlier is now gone. We hear some Rocky sucks chants, plenty of boos to a lot of stuff he did when Rock's on the offensive. It's crazy. The Rock applies a sharpshooter, and the crowd chants, "Let's go Lesnar." Heyman distracts the ref, so The Rock pulls him in the ring, and he looks like he's going to hit the rock bottom on Paul, but Lesnar stops it. As referee Mike Chioda is dealing with Heyman, Lesnar hits The Rock with a chair in the ribs and then puts The Rock in a bear hug, the same move that he took out Hulk Hogan with. I love how they're putting over the bear hug here. The two go back and forth and eventually end up on the outside. And after The Rock clears off the Spanish announce table, he catches Heyman sneaking up on him and then bounces Paul's face off the table. He slingshots Lesnar into the ring post and then puts Heyman through the Spanish announce table via rock bottom. Definitely a moment worth going on the highlight reel for this show. Paul Heyman taking a bump through a table.
If I may, sir.
Back in the ring, The Rock hits Lesnar with a rock bottom, but Lesnar is able to kick out at 2, and then he delivers a rock bottom of his own, or a Brock bottom, as Taz puts it on commentary. That was great. Rock also kicks out at 2, though. Rock goes for a people's elbow, but Brock jumps up and goes for the F5. Rock is able to escape and attempts another rock bottom, but Lesnar reverses again into the F5, and he hits it this time, and that's all she wrote. 14 minutes, 38 seconds, 3.25 stars in the Observer. It is worth noting that the fan reaction in this one was due to the fans knowing that The Rock would be leaving to pursue his acting career after this. He would be gone from this until January of 2003. He would return as a heel as a result of the reception he got from fans when he left.
Great work,
and it's
by the
also,
way. That's wrong.
His heel run in 2003 was top. I mean, that's
Incredible.
next. That was elite.
Incredible.
It's also worth mentioning that Brock Lesnar is now the champion just 5 minutes into his first run with the company. He debuted in March of this year. So, great stuff there. Great match.
So, this match from like a technical standpoint is nothing to just write home about, but it has everything else that you need in a wrestling match. Like the interference from Paul, and as good as Brock is, you can tell in this match he's greener than Goose, you know what? Like, but dude, like, it's not a bad thing. Like, he's young, and when he does kind of like overdo something, it's realistic because he's freaking Brock Lesnar.
Yep.
And you add that third character of Paul Heyman, which you mentioned, Ponytail Paul is a menace. He is Dennis the Menace, literally. A grown man is Dennis the Menace. And I think the ability for Paul to take bumps in this match is, I mean, he's not a worker, man. Like, it's crazy. He's had, like, what, 3 matches ever? He had the one with Cornette. He had that one on SmackDown. Like, yeah, man, I mean, very limited in ring time for Paul. I thought he held up his end, though. Great stuff. But to me, the story of this match, what makes it really good is the crowd.
Yeah.
The crowd turning on The Rock, knowing what's coming, which in hindsight, I don't understand. I mean, I think people being successful outside of the business is good for the business, ? I think Batista being a great actor now would mean even more if he were to, for some reason, decide he wanted to wrestle another match. Like, yeah, man, let's use a little bit of that rub a little bit. And look, I know that we don't have to get into a side talk of The Rock's acting career. That's another topic for another day. But I do think wrestling fans do have that kind of weird reaction when people kind of leave their hub and go try to do something else. I find that very odd. But again, it's kind of like somebody leaving your team to go play for another team. So it's really, I understand it.
Yeah, I think John Cena is the one person that got away with it because he did it in a different way. John Cena didn't just leave. He was also there for 20. I'd say he was also there for 20 years.
Yeah, like 20 years.
But when Cena first started getting into acting and everything, like it seemed like he never missed TV. He was still working weekly TVs and shooting his movies on the side.
Sure.
So when The Rock says he's leaving, and as we find out, he leaves for over 6 months, it's like, okay. I think that leaves a sour taste. It's like, oh, you think you're too good for us now? Like, we made you. That's one of those, how I take it.
Hey, they build you up the same way they tear you down, because less than 2 years later, they're booing Lesnar out of the building for the same thing.
For the same reason. Yep.
But no, man, great match. And you can tell Michael Cole and Taz are a little rattled by the crowd. Like, I don't think they were expecting that much of that much vitriol at The Rock. I really don't think so. Again, I talked about Heyman's bumps, but I mean, just, really good stuff. And I thought the match was booked perfectly. Made Brock look like a monster, but was a little vulnerable because, look, it's The Rock. You don't want Brock to come in and completely squash him as this youngster, although I think that would have been a really fun thing in history. But no, man, good match. Very entertaining all the way through. I think this is one of The Rock's better in-ring matches. I think I would have loved to seen a couple years ago. Well, it's been a decade now because we're getting old. But if Brock and Rock could have gone one more time, I think that would have been a really fun thing to see.
Yeah.
Also, it was really fun in hindsight to see Rock and Paul working together, given the bloodline angle and how that's gone on. And I don't think Rock and Paul are done working together. That's just my opinion there. But no, man. I agree. I loved it. I thought it was really good. Right call, obviously, with The Rock leaving. It was, rumor has it that it was The Rock pushing hard for Brock to get the belt. Like, hey, got this guy. Yep. This is the guy. Like, this is your next guy. You have him right here. Let me put him over on the way out. I want to do that. So I thought it was really, really good. You got a monster champion, which you completely ruin in a few months with the Big Show. We'll talk about that show another time. But anyway, fun stuff, man. I thought young Brock, and this is the last thing I had, young Brock is even scarier than right now Brock to me. Just that young, white face, he looks so young here, bro. He doesn't. He almost looked like a different person. He really did. Yeah, man. I thought it was really good. Really good.
So before we get into the closing thoughts and segments here, I did mean to mention this earlier, so I'm just going to throw it in here. I mentioned that Rob Van Dam unified the European and Intercontinental titles earlier. Well, the night after this show on Raw, he would unify the Hardcore and Intercontinental titles, and the Hardcore title would be forever done. So Poor went out for the Hardcore title. He would defeat Tommy Dreamer on Monday Night Raw, August 26th. So
I'm all right with that one too.
Yeah, I mean, if you look up the Wikipedia page for the Hardcore title and count the number of title changes in 1 year, it's insane. So
I loved the 24/7 rule, though.
It was entertaining for sure.
Yeah,
So, next up, let's just close it out. Let's get into our segments here. We'll go the 5-star RVD 5-star segment. We'll go the Shockmaster Shockingly Bad segment, and then the report card with your grade. I'll let you do the honors. You go first.
All right, buddy. My RVD 5-star moment was Shawn Michaels, the first time he lands a super kick. I thought that was great. I know Sweet Chin Music, but he didn't really set it all up like a Sweet Chin Music. But the crowd still kind of went bananas. So again, I thought, what a cool moment, because it's first one since WrestleMania 14 in a match. I'm not talking about him being the commissioner and wearing short shorts on TV on the first episode of SmackDown. I didn't need to see. He's the ref. Like, I'm talking about in-ring HBK.
Yeah.
Honestly, let's just chalk it up to that return as my 5-star moment. I thought was really special.
Fair.
And one that I won't forget.
So my 5-star RVD 5-star moment, I'm going to go with Brock Lesnar winning the title 5 months into his career.
Sure.
Taking the belt off one of the biggest stars the business has ever seen, beating him clean in the ring. I loved it. So, like I said, I'm a homer, though. Brock is one of my favorites of all time. So what you got?
And that's
for the
why I want to
Shockmaster?
that's why I want to give honorable mention to, of course, the GOAT picking up a victory, retaining the tag team championships like he should.
Yeah, Lance Storm.
Captain Charisma at it again. And while we're recording this show, apparently he ripped somebody for not having a father again, like a heel's supposed to. Just throwing that out there. Anyway, look, Shockmaster, shockingly bad. Great title, by the way. Shockmaster, shockingly bad moment. Anything involving Eric Bischoff and Stephanie on screen together. All of them. But since I'm going to pick one, I don't want to cop out. The last one was particularly terrible. The cringe, awkward laugh from Stephanie McMahon just completely, it soured me on them so much. You know, I love, those are probably my two favorite general manager characters. As much as I love Paul,
hold on a second,
better suited. Anyway, one-on-one with the Undertaker player. But no, I think they're my two favorite on-screen general manager characters. And for whatever reason, they just didn't have the chemistry, man.
Yep. So my Shockmaster moment. Listen, there's not much bad on this show at all. Minimal botches. Like, there wasn't even any botches in the matches that stood out. They were very small when they happened. No bad matches at all. But like you said, one thing definitely stands out, and it's the acting from Stephanie McMahon and Eric Bischoff. So I put anytime they were on screen together, I did take a cop out. They're all bad. Brutal.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
What about your report card? Give me a grade A through F and give me your reasoning.
F-. Come on, this show sucks. No, man, I am kidding. A++. I don't know if I'm allowed to give that, but A++, man, are you kidding? One of my favorite shows of all time. I mentioned it off the top. It's a comfort show for me. I can put it on anytime, be highly entertained. I love the history around this time for WWE, a very, time where there's a lot of new stuff, a lot of moving pieces, moving parts. And I think that created a good show somehow. Because look, not every show in 2002 is good, although I do think there's a lot of good shows in 2002. Even the TV, I think, was was pretty decent. It's the end of 2003 into 2004 when we start to get a little smelly here as far as the TV. But this was a good time. Stacked roster, not a bad match on the card. One of my favorite matches of all time is on this card. One of my favorite finishes of all time, which is Brock going over there, even though I'm a Rock homer. But, I mean, right call for sure. Again, A++. Love it. Thanks for letting me come on and give it all the praise it so rightfully deserves.
Yeah, absolutely. So for my report card, I'm not going to beat around the bush. This show is awesome. This is the best SummerSlam of all time. This is definitely up there for best pay-per-view of all time. I can't think of a better one.
Question for you.
Yes.
I got a question for you when you're done. No, when you're done.
Okay. For a show that had, the show went 2 hours, 42 minutes. Of that, 1 hour, 18 minutes, and 6 seconds was actually wrestling. But you don't feel that because it wasn't loaded down with crap filler. Like, all the filler minus the Stephanie and Eric stuff was entertaining, and almost everything served a purpose. It was all good except for the Eric. Jamie Noble and the Fink were the comedy highlights. I love this show as well. This is the highest grade I've given out so far. This is an A+ for sure. What's your question? Can you hear me? Well, looks like I lost Mike. But, yep, and he just texted me his internet has booted him. That's okay. Show is wrapping up anyway. Mike, glad you could join me, brother. You're welcome back anytime. All right, so the poll options for next episode, we're going to go back to our every other week format. So with September being the next month and being the start of fall, we got to go fall brawl here. So here's our 4 poll options for the next episode. You can vote for these on Twitter at @loreofthering_. Again, give us a follow, share us. My Twitter is at @dmfrank_. So give us a follow and chat with us. I love interacting with you all. Poll option number 1, Fall Brawl 1993. This Fall Brawl had was the first Fall Brawl pay-per-view to feature a War Games match. It saw Sting, Davey Boy Smith, Dustin Rhodes, and the Shockmaster. Yes, that Shockmaster, the one that I named the shockingly bad moment after, the one that fell through the wall when he debuted. Anyway, they're taking on Sid Vicious, Vader, and Harlem Heat. Other card highlights include Rick Rude versus Ric Flair, and the Nasty Boys versus Arn Anderson and Paul Roma. Next, poll option number 2, WCW Fall Brawl 1996. This show included Chris Benoit versus Chris Jericho, The Giant versus Macho Man Randy Savage, and the War Games match between the NWO's Hall, Nash, Hogan, and NWO Sting versus Team WCW's Lex Luger, Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, and Sting. Poll option 3, WCW Fall Brawl 1997. This card featured Eddie Guerrero versus Chris Jericho, the Steiner Brothers versus Harlem Heat, and then in War Games, you had the NWO's Buff Bagwell, Kevin Nash, Conan, and Syxx. They took on the Four Horsemen, Ric Flair, Chris Benoit, Mongo McMichael, and Kurt Hennig. Last poll option, number 4, WCW/NWO's Fall Brawl 98. This show had Rick Steiner versus Scott Steiner, Conan versus Scott Hall, and then in War Games, you had a triple threat War Games match between Team WCW, consisting of DDP, Roddy Piper, and the Warrior, formerly known as the Ultimate Warrior, versus NWO Hollywood, which was Hollywood Hogan, Bret Hart, and Stevie Ray, versus NWO Wolfpack, Kevin Nash, Sting, and Lex Luger. So yeah, be on the lookout for that poll. Like I said, if you're listening to this on Apple, Spotify, Google, any other where that you get your audio platform or audio podcast, you'll be hearing this if you're listening on the release date, it'll be the 21st anniversary of SummerSlam 2002. Video should be up on YouTube a couple days after, so you may not get it on the 25th, but close enough. 21 years ago. What a fun show. But with that fun show, SummerSlam 2002 is down for the 3 count. So long from the Volunteer State.